During World War II, almost every major military had access to some form of body armor, yet you rarely ever see it being used by soldiers in combat. In fact, it seems that more troops made use of body armor during World War I than in World War II, and just a few years after World War II, body armor became a common sight on the battlefields of the Korean War. So if militaries were using body armor before and after the war, then why don't we see more troops wearing body armor during World War II? Well, today I'll attempt to answer that by covering some of the body armor designs that were available during World War II, why those designs didn't see more use in combat, and some of the technological breakthroughs that directly led to body armor becoming a standard issue item for troops in different militaries across the globe. It'd be pretty lame to make a video like this without shooting anything, so I'll be shooting at some body armor throughout this video to help us visualize the performance of modern body armor available on the market today compared to the stats of World War II body armor technology. It would be really exciting if I wore some of the body armor while we tested it, but too bad. I'm not that desperate for views yet. Let's get over to the range and see what we have in store. To act as a benchmark for the World War II body armor designs that we're covering today, I have two modern body armor plates from today's sponsor, RMA. These are their new XRT or Extreme Rifle Threat plates. They help bridge the gap between the lightweight level 3+ plates and stronger, heavier level 4 plates. The XRT cuts a lot of weight and doesn't sacrifice multi-hit, hard-hitting performance against penetrating and armor-piercing rounds like M855, M855A1, M80A1, and even 7.62x54R armor-piercing incendiary. For years, the performance gap between level 3+ and 4 plates meant that you either had to shell out the big bucks for level 3+ plates that wouldn't defeat half of the AP and penetrator rounds that level 4 plates would, or you could suffer with extremely expensive and heavy level 4 plates that weigh 8 pounds or more each. The XRT is as close to level 4 plates as you can get without having to swallow that additional weight and cost. I'm really excited to test them out during our demonstration today. The XRT shooter's cut plates come in at just 5.3 pounds for a 10x12 inch cut. And coming in at only $199.99, now everyone can afford American-made body armor without sacrificing performance. XRT plates are also incredibly thin at only 3/4 of an inch, leaving plenty of room for soft armor panels, trauma pads, or medical kits. These are the perfect performance upgrade if you run a standard law enforcement soft armor vest. So cut the price, cut the weight, and keep the performance by picking up RMA's XRT plates using the link in the description. So let's get into talking about some World War II body armor designs, and we'll come back to shoot at these plates in a bit so we can benchmark the performance of those World War II designs to some of the best that modern technology has to offer. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any World War II body armor here to shoot today. Believe it or not, that can be a bit rare and expensive, so we'll just have to use period performance data for our benchmarking. Before we start shooting anything, let's go back a bit before World War II to set the stage for the body armor designs to come. During the Mycenaean era in 1400 BC, body armor began appearing on battlefields. You know what, maybe that's a little too far back. Let's just start with World War I. Along with the many advancements in weapons technology made during the First World War came improvements to the equipment used to protect soldiers from those new, more powerful weapons. Helmets are definitely the best example of this, with pretty much every military adopting some form of protective helmet by the end of World War I, but plenty of designs for body armor and shields were put to use as well. In many cases, these body armor designs weren't too different from the armor that had been in use for centuries, with some troops wearing chainmail vests, large armored breastplates, or even soft armor made from silk and other fibers. In general, these designs were either not that effective or super heavy and cumbersome, or often both. Soldiers still sometimes appreciated a bit of extra protection though, and there were even many commercially available body armor options that soldiers could buy on their own to wear underneath their uniform. The body armor available at this time typically provided some protection against shrapnel and maybe even pistol rounds, but to defend against rifle rounds, troops needed to turn to something a bit more substantial, like plate armor shields. Those metal plate shields could afford to be a bit thicker and heavier because you didn't have to wear them on your body. Cumbersome armored suits and heavy plate shields could be fairly useful at times due to the fairly static and often defensive nature of trench warfare. Slightly lighter designs were sometimes used by troops who were storming enemy trenches, but anything protective enough to be worth wearing would still reduce your mobility a good bit. That's the trade-off with body armor that continues to this day, but something important changed between World War I and World War II. Sorry, I think I read my notes wrong. That says nothing important changed between World War I and World War II. The body armor technology available at the start of World War II was pretty much exactly the same as what was used during World War I, but those designs just had less applications in the more mobile and dynamic battlefields of the Second World War. Now that doesn't mean that body armor was never used in combat during the war, but it did mean that it was often reserved for particular applications and that militaries had to be a bit creative with the designs to make them useful. These constraints led to some breakthroughs in bullet-resistant technology during the war that completely revolutionized body armor and led to the surge in personal armor usage after World War II. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Before we can cover why body armor gained so much popularity following World War II, we need to first really understand why it wasn't popular during the war. So let's get into some examples of World War II body armor designs and do some demonstrations of the types of projectiles they could withstand. Now, I can't cover every type of World War II body armor in one video, so I tried to pick a few examples that I feel are representative of the types of armor available at the time. First up, let's take a look at the Soviet SN-42 steel breastplate. This was just one iteration in a line of steel breastplates developed by the Soviets during World War II, but the SN-42 seems to have been the most prevalent and most successful of these designs. The plate weighed in at around 7.5 pounds, so really not too heavy, and it provided pretty good coverage of the torso, but didn't cover the back or any other areas. You can see the plate isn't symmetrical. It has a cutout on the right side so soldiers could still shoulder their weapons, and full protection on their left side, which would be facing the enemy while you're firing. That's also the side that your heart is on, so pretty important to protect that. I mentioned the trade-off between protection and mobility, and that was clearly a consideration with this design. The plate was made just thick enough to be able to reliably defeat German 9mm rounds, which kept it fairly lightweight while still providing some protection. That made this armor fairly well suited for urban and close quarters combat because it still allowed troops to move relatively quickly, but provided protection from common close quarters threats, like submachine guns, pistols, grenade shrapnel, and bayonets. For that reason, the armor was often used by Soviet assault engineers who were often tasked with assaulting German fortifications and other troops in similar situations. So why didn't the Soviets just give this design to all infantry troops? Well, even though it wasn't super heavy, a big steel plate on your chest like this was still pretty uncomfortable and awkward to wear. It made it much more difficult to crawl, crouch down, bend over, and other basic movements that are pretty essential in combat. It also didn't really provide any protection against rifle and machine gun rounds, which would pass right through this thin plate. Keep in mind, the majority of German troops were equipped with rifles, and German machine guns were the biggest small arms threat to Soviet troops on the battlefield. So why would they issue out armor that slows down your troops, doesn't even protect them from the most common small arms threats, and oh yeah, costs a lot of time, money, and scarce resources to make? The trade-off there just didn't make sense outside of those few soldiers in specialized situations. Now that we covered the history of that armor and why it wasn't used more often, let's see how our modern body armor plate, which is lighter than that World War II Soviet design, holds up to a 9mm round, the most powerful round that Soviet body armor could reliably protect against. Unfortunately, I don't have a World War II era 9mm to shoot today. That Luger I had for a bit is now in the hands of a lucky subscriber, so I'll just use my Smith & Wesson Shield. I have my body armor plate set up on my high-tech body armor stand down there, so let's take a shot at it and see how it holds up. All right, let's have a look. Here's our body armor plate, and there's our bullet right there, stuck into the plate. No dent on the back whatsoever. This plate had absolutely no problem with this 9mm. There's no dent on the back whatsoever. You wouldn't even know this has been shot at if you couldn't see the bullet sticking out of it. Man, body armor has come a long way. I think we're gonna need to step things up a good bit to even put a dent in that RMA plate. All right, now let's get into the next World War II body armor design that we'll cover today. British MRC armor. The armor is named after the Medical Research Council who helped develop it, and it consisted of 3 small armored plates, each 1mm thick. One plate covered the chest, another hung low to guard the abdomen and groin, and the final plate guarded the back. I think given the constraints they were working with, it was a smart choice to use small plates to cover the vital organs. Even today, very small plate carriers that just cover your vital organs are very popular because they allow you to maintain mobility while protecting what counts. 79,000 sets of this armor were issued during World War II, with 15,000 going to the British Army and 64,000 going to the Royal Air Force. This design was a step in the right direction, but these vests were rarely ever used by ground troops in battle. So if they were available, why didn't more troops make use of these armored vests? Well, the reasons are pretty similar to the last design we covered. In testing, this armor was able to stop a .38 pistol round at 5 yards, a .45 round from a Thompson at 100 yards, and a .303 rifle round at 700 yards. Not bad, but the fact that it couldn't stop a rifle round at typical engagement distances and covered such a small area meant that it really just didn't provide soldiers with much protection. Perhaps most important though, soldiers reported that it was just uncomfortable to wear, causing chafing, sweating, and making it difficult to move around normally. Again, for the average soldier, the trade-off of mobility just wasn't worth the tiny bit of added protection. This design did spark some other very important body armor development though. The US military evaluated this MRC armor, and even though they decided not to adopt this particular design, it ended up highlighting a possible use case. They found that bomber crew members were often being killed by low-velocity shrapnel coming from flak and cannon round explosions. Bomber crews also didn't need to move around the way that ground troops did, so they could afford to wear a heavier vest that would protect them from that shrapnel. And just like that, the concept of the flak vest was born. After some additional testing, the US Army Air Forces adopted a design that they designated the M1 Flyers Vest. This vest was heavy, weighing in at 17.4 pounds or over 22 pounds with the attached apron that was later adopted. But weight wasn't much of a concern for these flyboys, and this vest provided much better coverage than pretty much any other design we'll look at today. The vest was designed with an array of 2x2-inch manganese steel plates sewn into the fabric, which provided flak protection while allowing it to remain somewhat flexible. Over 330,000 M1 vests were produced during the war, along with 95,000 M2 vests, which was a similar design used by bomber pilots and co-pilots that only had an armored front since they sat in armored seats. The M1 and M2 vests were extremely successful and saved countless lives during World War II. But I think it's pretty obvious why a design like this wasn't used by the ground troops we've been talking about. They were just far too heavy and bulky to be practical for that application. Even though the M1 vest was primarily designed to stop shrapnel, testing showed that it could stop a .45 caliber projectile as well. So let's head back to the range and see how our modern body armor plate holds up to a shot from a .45. All right, let's take it a step up now and try the .45 ACP through a World War II era 1911 and see if our body armor can stop it. Looks like it stopped it. Let's take a closer look. And we stopped it again. Again, this time, absolutely nothing on the back. It didn't balloon out or anything. Little more damage to the ceramic there than with the 9mm, and it made a little bit bigger of a tear. This time the bullet didn't stick in there, it bounced out, but you can see it still stopped that with absolutely no trouble. It's gonna take a lot more than that to get through those plates. Let's move on to another World War II armor design, and this one is a bit different than what we've covered so far. The Japanese Type 99 Armored Shield. This was a bullet-resistant shield, sometimes used with Japanese machine guns and other small arms during World War II. The shield came in two sizes, a 12x16-inch shield and also a larger 14x20-inch version. These were often used in fortified positions, but they could be set up out in the open as well. I know sometimes people refer to these as sniper shields, and while it's possible they were used for that at times, it seems they were much more often used with Japanese machine guns. A portable shield like this was really one of the few personal protection items during the war that could provide some protection from rifle fire. The shields were fairly heavy. I believe the smaller of the shields weighed in somewhere around 13 pounds, and testing found that it could stop a .30 caliber projectile from an M1 rifle at as close as 100 feet. The shield was typically able to keep standard ball rounds from penetrating all the way through it, but when those rifle rounds hit the shield, it sent fragments flying off the back of it, which would be very bad news for whoever was using it. When that same test was performed with armor-piercing rounds instead of ball rounds, they went right through. The Japanese developed some other armored shield designs during World War II as well. My favorite is this one that makes you look like a turtle, and they also developed this body armor vest that wasn't very effective but had a very influential design that I'll touch on again later. The Type 99 shield was the most bullet resistant of the Japanese protective equipment though, and even though it had trouble handling rifle rounds up close, it was still effective at defeating rounds from weaker weapons like the US M1 carbine. So let's head back to the range and see how our modern plate holds up to a shot from a World War II M1 carbine. Let's take it another step up now. This is .30 carbine, so a little smaller round than the .45, but moving a lot faster. And it's coming out of our M1 carbine from World War II here, so it's also going through a much longer barrel than that .45 we shot, which will increase the velocity further. Well, it knocked it over. Let's go see if it stopped it. Oh yeah, we definitely stopped it, but look at that bulge in the back. Now, it's a pretty small bulge. If you were wearing it, I'd guess maybe you would feel something there, but I don't think it would be enough to like move enough to break your ribs or something like that. I think you would have a little bit of a bruise and be totally fine. We got a bulge though, so that's something. I think this next round's gonna give it a run for its money. All right, since that didn't make it through, let's take it another step up with a 30-06 round fired from a 1903 A3 rifle. At this point, we have surpassed what any World War II body armor design could reliably protect against. Remember that even that Japanese shield, which was only a few inches larger and 8 pounds heavier than our modern body armor plate, wasn't able to safely protect the user from a 30-06 round at this range. Do you think our modern plate will be able to stop it? There's only one way to find out. I moved the other plate out of the way and put a fresh one down there, so this will be an undamaged plate taking a 30-06 round. Let's see how we do. Oh my God, we stopped it. Look at the back of this. There's a pretty big bulge, but honestly, it's not even that much bigger than the bulge that M1 carbine round made. You can see the cavity in there where it really pushed the ceramic back and broke it up. I can see what looks like pieces of the round in there, but it completely stopped this. And I'm willing to bet that if we shot it again up here, it would be completely fine. I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. They do call this extreme rifle threat protection, but man, they were not kidding. So there you have it, guys, a 5.3 pound plate stopping a 30-06 round. I am so impressed with the performance of those RMA plates. It is absolutely crazy how far body armor technology has come in just the past few decades. Of course, who would I be if I just called it quits after that plate stopped a round from a 1903? Of course, I had to shoot everything I could find at those plates to see what would happen. Okay, now this might look bad, but I don't think we had any penetrating hits here. You can see at the top, it's super frayed because I skimmed the top with a couple of those rounds, and it was at so much of an angle by the end that it was kind of pulling this material up and out. But if you look at the back here where these rounds were hitting, we barely even have a dent. Let's try some 6.5 Creedmoor. This is green tip M855. Those plates were able to stop every type of round I shot at it, and the only way we were able to finally get through them was by hitting it with multiple rifle rounds in the same area. Which, yeah, of course that'll go through eventually. In real life though, I don't think that's a realistic concern unless you plan on wearing that plate in front of a firing squad. And the plates were able to stop many rifle impacts when they were spread out on the plate. It was just hitting it in the same spot over and over that went through. Okay, so how did we get from heavy flak vests that could only stop a 45 round to those RMA plates that weighed just a few pounds and defeated multiple rifle impacts? Well, the first step in that development happened during World War II. Remember that Japanese body armor vest I mentioned? Well, like most of the designs we've looked at, that vest used thin steel plates for its bullet resistance. But instead of using one large plate or many small plates, it used 3 medium-sized plates inserted into pockets sewn into a simple cloth vest. That vest was still heavy and impractical, but when that design was combined with another breakthrough in armored technology, it revolutionized personalized body armor. In 1943, the Dow Chemical Company created a new ballistic material made from layers of glass filament and resin. This new material, called Doron, named after Colonel Doriot, chief of the Military Planning Division, was far lighter than any of the metallic armor used up to that point. During testing, a Doron plate just 1/16 of an inch thick was able to stop a round from a 1911. Pretty impressive, especially considering Doron was only about 1/4 the weight of steel. The Navy and Marine Corps were both extremely interested in this new material, and a prototype body armor design was quickly made by sewing pockets to the inside of a standard Marine Corps P-41 uniform that held a number of 1/8 inch thick Doron plates. A simple design that was partially inspired by that Japanese vest design that had medium-sized removable armored plates in it. A version for the Navy was developed as well that used pockets sewn into a standard Navy K-Pock life vest to hold Doron plates. Of course, as with any military design, the top brass had to be sold on at first before it could be greenlit and put into production. So a demonstration was held to show just how effective this new design could be. During the demo, a Navy officer wore each type of jacket while another shot him with a 1911 pistol. This was repeated a total of 21 times without any serious injury, and unsurprisingly, the head honchos were sold on the effectiveness of this design. The Marine Corps then placed an order for an initial batch of 1,000 Doron-plated jackets. I believe most of those came in the form of this new vest, which was specially designed to hold the Doron plates, but it's possible some of those armored P-41 jackets were supplied as well. This design provided more coverage and flexibility than most of the other options we've looked at so far, and the entire thing only weighed about 8 pounds. This batch of new body armor was supplied to the 2nd Marine Division before Operation Iceberg, the invasion of Okinawa. The hope was that data could be collected on the effectiveness and usability of this armor in combat. When the actual invasion took place, however, the 2nd Marine Division was held in reserve, so these vests never got the combat testing that Marine leadership had hoped for. It's possible that some of these vests were put to use during later mop-up operations on Okinawa, but their combat effectiveness was never truly tested before the end of the war. After World War II, Doron development continued, and the material saw plenty of use on the front lines of the Korean War. A small number of those World War II vests intended for use on Okinawa were reissued in Korea, and a new Doron vest called the M1951 Armored Vest was adopted by the Marine Corps. This vest used a combination of Doron plates with thick layers of nylon to provide additional protection, and it was found to be extremely successful, decreasing casualties by as much as 30% by some reports. That vest laid the groundwork for essentially every soft and hard body armor design used since then. Sure, the materials have come a long way. Now we often see vests made of Kevlar instead of nylon, and plates made from ceramic instead of Doron. But the idea of using strong woven fibers, often in combination with rigid armored plates, has stuck around to this day. So now that we've covered the designs available during World War II and the developments that took place after the war, I think we can finally answer our question. Why didn't more ground troops make use of body armor during World War II? Well, my answer is that body armor technology just didn't catch up with the required mobility of soldiers before the war ended. Throughout the war, plenty of innovative designs were created, but none could reach that balance of providing sufficient protection without overly hampering mobility that was needed in order for body armor to benefit the typical infantryman. It seems to me that those Doron vests finally reached a tipping point on that scale, but they just came around too late in the war to make an impact on the front lines. We often think of body armor as being something that didn't really come around until after World War II, but it was the crucial developments in technology made during the war that caused the explosion in popularity of flak jackets and protective armor after World War II ended. Thanks for staying invested in this video, guys. I'm sorry, that was a dumb one. I'll probably catch some flack for that. Okay, big thank you to my Patreon and YouTube members who support my work on this channel. My Hotshot tier supporters this month are John Green and Corey Mahler. Corey and John, thanks so much for having my back and believing in my content. I really appreciate you guys. I also have a ton of new Trench Philosopher members, so thank you guys so much for contributing. I put a lot of time and research into making these videos, and it's my full-time job, so your contributions really do help me out. If you are interested in helping to support my work and gaining access to exclusive content and perks in the process, please consider clicking the join button next to my channel name below to become a member. I'll also mention that if you're interested in more information on the history of body armor, I highly recommend this Osprey book on flak jackets. It was very helpful with my research for this video, and it's got a ton of good information. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to pick up your own XRT plates from RMA using the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.